Morning, everybody. Happy, oh my God, are they still at it, day of the general election? And welcome to the News Agenda with me, Fleet Street Fox. And today I'm joined from a train, so the Wi-Fi might kick out, but the Mirror's political correspondent, Dave Burke, is on the way to connect with the Labour battle bus today. Morning, Dave.
Morning, how are you?
Fine, thank you very much. Not having to get up early and travel down to Southampton, so it's all. So this is the People's Paper Review with the train announcements, let it be. So get into the comments, ask us your questions. We'll do our best to answer them for you. Those of you listening later on podcast will just have to hope the trains are running on time for once, or Dave will miss the press conference. So what have we got for you today? Well, the Mirror has splashed on Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves and her plan for a new industrial revolution and a promise of 650,000 jobs. Isn't that nice? More on that in a bit, but first, let's go off on a little slightly connected tangent to page 15 and the revelation that gun crime in the UK has risen by 20% in the past decade, just as I suspect, while low paid jobs have also risen. Dave, can you take us through this? Has it really got that bad? 20% in a decade?
Yes, I mean, essentially these figures that come out from the Home Office, I mean, they do make some fairly stark reading. They estimate that there's probably just over 17 incidents on average per day across the UK. Some areas are worse affected than others. Particularly the West Midlands, for example, has seen it double in that time. Although, interestingly, London has seen a fall in the number of gun crime incidents over a decade, which is interesting.
So, yeah, presiding over some kind of, hellscape in London, but London's better than other places.
Well, apparently so, yeah. Yeah.
All right, the West area is like the northeast, isn't it? Which is a Tory bear.
So obviously we've seen these figures go up. Obviously, it's nowhere near the level that we're experiencing with knife crime in this country. But essentially, sort of what the National Police Chiefs Council, sorry, I don't know if you can still hear me here. They're saying that this is largely driven by the use of imitation weapons, some of which are converted into sort of lethal weapons. So yeah, I mean, this is certainly something that's shown a rise over some time, which is very alarming.
Yeah, what do you think, everybody? Are you concerned about gun crime? It's not something people have been talking about much, with knife crime tending to take all the headlines and arguably probably affecting more people in terms of numbers, but gun crime's all a bit worrying. So next question, I suppose, Dave, is why has it grown so much? I mean, it's been a decade. The Tories have been in power for 14 years. What have they been doing about this, or not doing about it, that has allowed this to happen? You hear me, Dave?
Oh, yeah, sorry, are you...
What are
the joys of doing this on the road.
Which brand of train are we on?
Yes, I mean... So obviously, I'm going to carry on assuming you can still hear me. So obviously, we've seen over the course of the Tory... Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Fantastic. Right, so obviously over the time that we've been, the Tories have been in government, we've seen they now argue that police numbers are higher than they've ever been. What that glosses over is the fact that there was a very significant dip in the middle 2010s, particularly when austerity came in. And also, there's a big problem across forces across the country at the moment with inexperienced officers. Although there's been a surge in the last 2-3 years, the number of people coming in, obviously a lot of chief constables are making the point that many of the people coming through the ranks, the proportion that have served over 5 years is significantly smaller than it's been at any time in recent history. So obviously there's issues with that, and obviously the intelligence side of things will suffer as well, because you've not got people with the long-term connections, with the sort of patterns that are happening within organised crime to the same degree, but also the number of people that have their sort of ear to the ground on communities. So there's a lot of learning still being done.
Right. So we had a big cut in police officers. Then when the Tories wanted to surge the numbers of police officers, they cut the entry requirements. So you've got less qualified people perhaps coming through and less experienced people, because they've had to come through on the hurry up. Those get pushed in. At the same time, you've had cuts to community services and so on, which might be trying to divert people from crime, and doing quite well at that if you hadn't cut it all and slashed and burnt it over the past few years. So we've just had a general sort of hollowing out, it would seem, of the situation. Paul says, where are the guns coming from? Part of this, I think, Dave, is the fact that these are legal weapons, blank firing weapons that it's legal to own and to purchase, that are being, as you said, being converted once they get to, because you can find a YouTube video, sorry, I shouldn't even say that, but you can find a YouTube video telling you how to convert weapons into live firing things, and then they become illegal. But you can purchase them legally, Paul, so it doesn't matter where they're coming from, I suppose, but you can convert them and make them illegal. But once they're in your hands, of course, there's no real way to track that, is there, Dave?
Yeah, I think this is exactly the problem. So, sort of the monitoring side of things is sort of very reliant on
it's reliant on something.
Intelligence work on sort of the local policing knowledge, but yeah, like you say, it's very difficult to monitor.
Yeah, and you broke up the first bit there. I'm sure you had a really important point to make about the fact that obviously they're purchasing these things legally. Is there any way to kind of crack down, I suppose, on the sale of these blank firing weapons? Because if the conversion can be done at home, that can't be cracked down on, really. But obviously, why would you want a blank firing gun anyway?
No, I mean, I think there's certainly not been as much talk on this as they have about knife crimes. It's sort of, if you look through certainly the Labour manifesto, there's some very strong promises on doing away with things like ninja swords and punishments for people that sell these weapons. Gun crime hasn't had the same level of focus, I don't think, over the last sort of 10, 15 years even, because of the level that it's happening. Obviously, when it does, it happens with absolutely horrendous effect. But yeah, certainly I think we're sort of with the surge in police officers, with the surge of particularly neighbourhood officers, I think both the Tories and Labour would argue that their plans will include measures to sort of address this without explicitly at this stage having spelled out how.
Yeah, don't worry, we'll fix it, but don't ask us how. Mike says, crime is allowed to flourish when the court system means someone committing a crime is likely to be in the system for years before trial, and the government is releasing prisoners early because of overcrowding. They are letting people out early. They're letting people out when perhaps they're not maybe rehabilitated. They haven't been through the right kind of processes to get them back out. And that, just even if you're inclined to be well behaved when you come out, the process of assimilating back into society can sometimes be so difficult that you may commit crimes on the way, which is part of why the release has to be staggered and staged. I don't think we've had Crime Day yet in the Labour media grid. Leslie says crime is flourishing because we lack stability in a government that understands society. Isn't it time they caught up with reality? That would be nice, wouldn't it, Leslie? Now, as I said, I don't think we've had Crime Day yet, but we have had the Labour manifesto and the Tory manifesto, actually. What's Labour's plan for dealing with this? What have they said?
Essentially, the crime plan, like I said, I mean, the explicit promises they made so far, there's a large focus, like I said, on knife crime, on the ban of sort of things like ninja swords, etc., the kind of weapons that we're seeing possibly more prevalently on the streets. The Labour are very much focusing their crime promise on the fact that they plan to bulk up local neighbourhood teams. They're saying that we've lost so many thousands of PCSOs and local neighbourhood officers over the past 10 years that this is where a lot of the sort of the identification work sort of is being lost. They're also promising through the money that they're going to raise through charging VAT and business fees on private schools, they're going to use that to set up sort of youth hubs across the country. which are going to do a lot of targeted mental health work, a lot of targeted sort of work around young offenders to make sure that there's no at risk of falling into gang crime can be identified. They're also going to say that they're doing a lot of targeted work around trying to.
Oh, Dave's gone now again, I think. Well, that was just a brief little picture we saw there, I think, of Olivia Pratt-Korbel's mum. Of course, she was shot on her doorstep. Dave, can you hear us again? So you went off.
Sorry, yes, I can hear you again.
Olivia Pratt-Korbel. It's all right. This is so much fun, isn't it? I love a bit of technology. Now, let's move on to the main story of the day while we've still got Dave and some kind of a signal. And Labour wants the country talking about today its plans for 650,000 new jobs in former industrial heartlands. On the front page, Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, for now anyway, seems to be talking about sort of revitalising communities that were broken by Thatcher right back in the 80s, Dave. Is that her plan?
Well, yeah, I mean, essentially, sort of Labour's made a big play on the fact that they want to try and bulk out the green industries. They want to effectively reward and incentivise sort of particularly energy companies that are going to invest in cleaner means of producing energy. Also made the UK more self-sufficient. You'll have seen Keir Starmer at various points on the road saying that because the Tories have dithered over the recent years, we've been more at risk of sort of being dictated to by people like Putin. We were very heavily hit when the gas prices went up because of the war in the Ukraine. So this is kind of a two-pronged approach from the Labour Party. They're trying to incentivise more green investment and ways of encouraging that, ways of using public money to then encourage private money to sort of create these jobs. And B, like you said, they've done a lot of work around the impact, the way some mining areas particularly were impacted, still sort of the knock-on effect that they're still experiencing from the Thatcher years, and ways to address that. So, I mean, some of the figures are absolutely startling. I think they've worked out that in some former mining areas, there's something like 57 employee jobs per 100 people of working age. This is way, way lower than in other parts of the country, particularly in cities where that number is.
There he is. Right, when we did hear Dave, it was 57 working jobs that were available in places where there are 100 people looking for work. So 57 jobs for every 100 people. And this is the Tories saying, well, you can't have benefits because you need to prove that you should be going out looking for work. Dave's completely frozen. So at this point, I'm chuntering. While we're waiting for Dave to come back, can I just put out a quick shout out? Anybody out there who's watching this, we want you to take part in the news agenda, okay? Now, this Wednesday, all our political guys are off on the road. And we don't have anybody for a guest for this show. So what we would like is for you to take part in the show, everybody. Can you, if you get, hang on a minute, Dave. If you are a Labour supporter, please let us, and you're available on Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. and maybe your Wi-Fi is a bit better than Dave's. Can you let us get in the comments and let us know, put your hand up and say you want to do it. If you are someone who has voted Tory in the past, please tell us, put it in the comments. And we want to try and have a bit of a, not an argy-bargy, but a bit of difference of views about how the election is going and how you think maybe your view has changed during the course of the election. So get into the comments, tell us what your normal inclination to vote is, and we'll try and have a bit of a different discussion on Wednesday morning. If you're available at 9 o'clock and got some Wi-Fi. Leslie says, bringing back industry and full-time secure employment is exactly what this country needs. Not just green investment, but right across the board. We need to take back public sector jobs from the private sector. There's an awful lot of stuff there to do, Leslie, and I don't think Labour's got all the money or indeed has made all the promises for some of that. So, Dave, we've got this thing where they're talking about creating the new jobs in the heartland, but how exactly are they going to do it? What are they offering? Because the piece is talking about investment in green energy firms. I'm not sure how that creates 650,000 jobs. Dave, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, sorry, you've.
Dave, can you hear me? How are these 650,000 jobs going to be created from investing in a green energy company?
So essentially, what Labour's doing is they're investing 7.3 billion in what they call a national wealth fund. Like I said, this is going to be with the intention of incentivizing it for companies to create these jobs in targeted areas. Of this, 2.5 billion is going to be directed towards rebuilding the steel industry. 1.8 is going to be directed towards upgrading ports, and there's going to be 1.5 billion for the automobile industry. So it's going to be very targeted towards sort of working with the private sector in order to create that level of recruitment. They say this is going to amount to about 350 jobs on average a day over the next 5 years.
Well, hopefully. So it's cars, ships, and ports. Cars, ships, and steel, rather. But that billion, 1.8 billion for ports. They've got a lot of ports, and once you spread that around, that's only a few hundred million here and there. It's like maybe extended dock or something. And as Steve says, it's funded how? Because this is 7 billion investment from the government, but they're talking about attracting 3 times that from the private sector to go in as well, aren't they? What's in it for the private sector? Is it because they've obviously, I suppose, that the government's helping a bit, but are they going to really put in 3 times as much? Dave's gone. This is, I know, thanks, Mike. This is good, isn't it? It's marvelous work, this. So I suppose the question is, are they really going to find this money? I'm going to have to read it from the paper now because I have to read it. Are they going to be able to find this money, and are they going to persuade the private sector that this is something that they want to do? They've got Rachel Reeves. Peter is saying he's happy to be a guest. I like a good debate. Thank you, Peter. Get into the comments. Let us know how you normally vote, all right, or how you have voted in the past. We don't just want Labour, blah, 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 blah on here. That's not what we do. We want a bit of scrutiny and a bit of, are you a Corbyn fan and you don't like how Starmer's doing it? Are you a Starmer fan? You didn't like how Corbyn did it? Are you someone who normally votes sort of centrist and Tory, or you vote strategically, or you voted Lib Dem, or you vote every which way? I don't care, but let us know in the comments which one is you, and we'll pick try to pick a representative handful to take part on Wednesday. Now, Reeves says in this piece of the paper, Britain's industrial heartlands were destroyed by Thatcher in the 1980s. Families and pensioners are still paying the price. Labour will turn things around with a plan to make working people better off in all parts of the country. She'll work night and day to bring back jobs to areas that have been forgotten under the Tory government. But Labour plans are to invest 7.3 billion, this new National Wealth Fund, and they're hoping to get 2, 3, 4 times that from the private sector. To unlock more monies to help fund this transition to net zero. I'm still not clear, Dave. You're back. Hooray! Yes, and Steve says, could Labour possibly sort out better Wi-Fi on trains, please? That would improve.
Yeah, that would be good, wouldn't it?
That would improve things. So how is this money, very quickly, Dave, has he gone again? How is this money going to actually create some new jobs? He's gone. God, again. Oh, my word. Mike says Labour seems to be on a charm offensive with big business. Maybe that lends credibility to their claim. It's a lot of money to try to raise from private sources. I suppose private equity and private business and so on, if you know you're putting a couple of quid in and the government's putting another quid in and you're going to get all the profits go your way, then that's why they would invest, because they're getting some help to invest and they're creaming all the profit themselves. But what Reeves is talking about here is a national sovereign wealth fund. So surely some of that money should be coming back to us. We should be getting some of the profit too. If you put in a quarter of the money, you want a quarter of the return, don't you? I would hope that is something that we might think about. And if that's the case, why would a private business invest if they're only going to get back the return for their investment, not the extra return from someone else's investment? It does seem a bit strange. So we don't, kind of what they're offering, but what we were hoping to do today is, Ian says, I vote blue. Starmer's chasing a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow that doesn't exist. He's looking for that magic money tree, Ian. If you want to take part on Wednesday at 9 a.m, please say so in the comments. Dave's back again for the umpty-tumptieth time. What's happening today? Presumably, we're going to get some more flesh on the bones of these promises from Rachel. What's the media grid? What are you going to be up to?
Yeah, so this is, like you say, we're going to be, we're heading down to the South Coast now, where we're going to hear some more detail from Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves about how this is going to work. They'll be taking questions about this and talking through some of the logistics. And then there's going to be another event later on in the day. in the West Country, where we're going to hear more details about sort of how it's going to work, how the jobs investment is going to work, and kind of what the Labour promises is. We're going to hear more on how we're sort of the impact it's going to have on these sort of the areas that were worst hit by the mining cuts, particularly.
Yeah. Because there's got a few of those in the southwest and around Bristol and so on. Kent had big mining industry before Thatcher came along. People tend to forget that. So hopefully there'll be some more questions and scrutiny from when you go on these battle buses and so on, Dave. Do they get a proper grilling from the journalists, or are you just busy sucking up all the merchandise that is coming your way? Dave's gone.
So I mean, essentially, you're ferried between events. We spent an awful lot of time. Oh, sorry, am I still here?
No, you're still there.
This really has been an episode to remember, hasn't it? So yeah, we're being ferried between. We're ferried from pillar to post, essentially. I mean, it's really interesting seeing how the campaign unfolds. So yeah, we'll have days like today where we're kind of moved between different speeches, particularly that Keir Starmer is going to be giving. So the media from across the spectrum, we're sort of travelling alongside the BBC, all the newspapers, all the broadcasters, and yeah, it's kind of an interesting way of sort of trailing how the campaign is going over the 6 weeks of the.
And it's gone again. Dave, if you can hear us, have you been on the Tory battle bus at all, or the Lib Dems? How do the battle buses compare? No, we're never going to know. We're never going to find out. So we've got an awful lot of work to do, it would appear, when the Labour Party actually does get into power, if that is how it goes, on July the 5th. David says, Sir Keir Starmer's dad was a tool maker, Susie. And in the case of Keir, he made a proper tool right enough. There's that mockery again. Of Keir Starmer constantly saying my dad was a toolmaker, and it has got a bit wearing. But there were some figures out over the weekend that showed about 27% of the public know that Keir Starmer's dad was a toolmaker, right? So it's had a huge cut through. And if you're going into an election when you're up against a multi-millionaire married to a billionaire, which also everyone knows about Rishi Sunak, and you've got someone over here whose dad was a toolmaker, it does help you to sort of normalise people a bit. So it can be something you mock, but on the other hand, it's working politically. And Keir Starmer gave an interview at the weekend, or just before the weekend, I think, talking about that moment when the political debate last week with Sky, where the audience laughed when he mentioned his dad. And he sort of took a moment and said, well, it's not worth laughing. You shouldn't be laughing at it, actually. He sort of told them off a bit like a teacher. And he said in this interview that quite hurt him, because his dad felt embarrassed about being a toolmaker and was laughed at and didn't go out socially and didn't want to engage sometimes with other people, and that he felt it was because he would be mocked for the job. And so, Starmer still felt a bit protective of him for being laughed at. But of course, they were laughing at Starmer, not at his dad. But still, Ian says, do they know what a toolmaker is, though, the voters? Possibly not, but someone who makes tools is probably more important than the person who's actually even using the tools. So it's a very important, crucial job, but it's not one that's brilliantly well paid, it's got to be said, or indeed gets enough gratitude and thanks for it. Next time you use a screwdriver, everybody, think about who invented it and how it was actually made. There we go. Dave's back. So I'm just going to quickly say, Dave, we'll move on to some good news and end this pain for all of us. How do their battle buses compare? Have you been on the other ones?
No, this is my first general election campaign, so I'm.
Oh, he's a baby. Okay, well, hopefully on the next election.
Yeah, very new to this.
Yeah, well, the last time I was on a battle bus, it was Gordon Brown. All right, so that was a long time ago, and I was on that by mistake because I think I just didn't get a lift somewhere. But I did manage to swipe myself a Gordon Brown mug. So if you get any merch, that's my tip for being on the battle bus, Dave. Swipe the merch. Anything that's going up your sleeve, off the bus, right? Because there's money in them there, Hills, or if nothing else, it's a nice memory to talk about when you're an old and crusty reporter like me. Right, thank you very much, everyone, for taking part. Thank you, Dave, for repeatedly logging in. We have found some good news in the world for you, and here it is. Oh, good Lord, I'm so glad this is nearly over. Right, speaking of hard graft, there's a story in today's paper about someone who arguably qualifies for the name Supermum, a woman called Linda Garforth from Oldham, who has fostered more than 300 children over 33 years. She's even adopted one of them herself. And that's despite the fact that she started to lose her eyesight 11 years ago. She's kept on doing it. Now, Oldham Council has just given her a long service award. And Linda says, this is her quote, "If you have room in your heart and your home, pick up the phone and inquire," because it's the best thing, she says, she ever did. I think that's very hard to see them go. She says it's fantastic to know you've given them a better start in life. Dave, if you can hear us, is this proof that if you want to fix something and put in the hours for it, put in the graph, just about anything can be done? No, Dave's not there. Dave's gone. Right, everybody, what do you think about Linda? Mike says, are we sure this isn't the Tory train? Message isn't getting through. It's going off the rails, etc., etc. We've crashed and burned, I think, this morning. This is why we're not speaking to the parliamentary team too much in the next few weeks. So I'm going to repeat my request, everybody. If you want to be on the news agenda this Wednesday, get in the comments and let us know. And hopefully you won't be in a little worry, little circle of death like we've got here with Dave. Okay. Let us know how you vote. Let us know if you're available at 9 o'clock on Wednesday morning if you want to do this and have a little discussion about how you think the general election is going and that you have a functioning Wi-Fi signal, everybody. Leslie says, I'm a floating voter. Not sure which way I'll vote this time. Will not be voting Tory or Reform. Great, Leslie. Let's have you on Wednesday. That'll be fantastic. You're one of our regulars. I'm happy to get on there. Paul's available. He's a Labour voter. Hooray! Get in the comments, people, and let me know. And I will contact you after this and try and round up a few to take part in this. Probably the next couple of weeks. We won't just have one. We'll have one this Wednesday, maybe next Wednesday as well. We'll have another dip into the voters and see what you think. That'll be handy. Dave, thank you so much for persevering. I'm not going to ask your view on good news because you just want to end the data stream right now and get back to reading the paper. And
so apologies for that.
It's not your fault. What is the train service we are on?
Good question. It's Southwest Rail, I think.
Southwest Rail?
Yeah.
Scum. Sort out your Wi-Fi, lads. Right, thank you everyone for taking part. Thank you everyone who persisted this far just to see how bad it would get. Thank you, Dave. And hopefully some of us will see you on Wednesday for another edition of the News Agenda. Until then, everybody, tatty bye.